In 1935, when the Government of India Act came, people wanted to have complete freedom and they wanted to have a constitution for the entire India. Objective resolution was presented by Jawaharlal Nehru, laying down the underlying principles of the constitution, which later became the preamble of the constitution. When we group the provinces, it gives more power to the group. That means more power to the people. But this is not mentioned in the resolution. That is what I found, says Ambedkar. Hello dear students, I am Anil, Assistant Professor of English, Vidhyaashram Postgrad College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Today we are going to discuss Constituent Assembly debates by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, prescribed for the students of 3rd semester BCom. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, as we all know, is considered the father of Indian Constitution. He was the chairman of Drafting Committee of Indian Constituent Assembly. He was born on 14th April 1891 and he expired on 6th December. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar was born on 14th April 1891. He was an Indian jurist, economist, social reformer, political leader. He headed the committee drafting the Constitution of India from the Constituent Assembly debates, served as Law and Justice Minister in the first cabinet of Jawaharlal Nehru, and inspired the Dalit Buddhist movement after renouncing Hinduism. So he graduated from Elphinstone College, University of Bombay, and studied economics at Columbia University and the London School of Economics, receiving doctorates in 1927 and 23 respectively, and was among a handful of Indian students to have done so at either institution in the 1920s. He also trained in the law at Gray's in London. His early career, he was an economist, professor, and lawyer. His late life was marked by his political activities. So he was in the beginning a lawyer, economist, and a professor, but later he jumped into the politics of India. He became involved in campaigning and negotiating for India's independence, publishing journals, advocating political rights and social freedom for Dalits, and contributing significantly to the establishment of the state of India. In 1956, he converted to Buddhism, initiating mass conversions of Dalits. In 1990, he was awarded the highest civilian award, that is Bharata Ratna, posthumously. So before we go on to the speech, what is this Constituent Assembly? British did not want to give independence to India. They wanted to give dominion status. But when this demand was not fulfilled, people of England, they did not like the status to be given to India, dominion status given to India. Therefore, they protested in their homeland. Therefore, it was cancelled. When it got cancelled, the people of India became very furious. It irritated them. It disturbed their thoughts on British. Therefore, they wanted Purna Swaraj, complete independence, as expressed in 1929 Lahore session of Congress. So after that, the intensity to get the freedom from the British rule became more. In 1935, when the Government of India Act came, people wanted to have complete freedom and they wanted to have a constitution for the entire India. In India, there were many provinces: Bombay Presidency, Calcutta Presidency, and Madras Presidency. Along with that, many other provinces ruled by the native kings of India. So putting all of them together, they wanted to have a united India. So in order to achieve that, they wanted to have a rule book. So the people of all the regions, the representative of the respective presidencies and provinces, they came together and they wanted to have a one common law book for the entire region of India. So in order to bring that to life, they made some rules, they brought some ideas, they read the constitution of many other countries. There was a group of people which brought all the ideas, types of governance, decided which is good for India and which is not, and they finally brought out the Indian Constitution in 1949, taking 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. So this Constitution of India that we have today is a result of a long process. So let us know what are the opinions of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. When Jawaharlal Nehru expressed the views or expressed his ideologies, they became the resolution. So there was a discussion on this resolution, and let us know what Ambedkar thought or what he reflected on those resolutions. So Constituent Assembly of India. It was elected to frame the Constitution of India. It was elected by the Provincial Assembly following India's independence from the British rule in 1947. Its members served as the nation's first parliament as the provisional parliament for India. The idea for a Constituent Assembly was proposed in December 1934 by M.N. Roy, a pioneer of communist movement in India and an advocate of radical democracy. It became an official demand of the Indian National Congress in 1935. The official demand for Constituent Assembly was raised and Government of India Act 1935 was rejected as it imposed the constitution which was against the will of the Indians. C. Rajagopalachari voiced the demand for a Constituent Assembly on 15th November 1939 based on an adult franchise and was accepted by the British in August 1940. So the plan for having a Constituent Assembly to prepare a constitution for India was voiced in 1934-40 like this. The members of the Constituent Assemblies were elected by the provincial assemblies by single transferable vote system of proportional representation. The total members of the Constituent Assembly was 389. So initially, when this Constituent Assembly was formed, there were 389 members. The elections for the 296 seats assigned to the British Indian provinces were completed by August 1946. Congress won the majority seats. The Muslim League had 73. After this election, the Muslim League refused to cooperate with the Congress. So there was a clash between Congress and Muslim League. So this is the issue here. So when everybody went into parliament or everybody went into form a Constituent Assembly, there were two groups and they were not agreeing with each other. Therefore, what happened? The political situation deteriorated. Hindus-Muslim riots began and the Muslim League demanded a separate Constituent Assembly for Muslims in India. On 3rd June 1947, Mountbatten, the last British Governor-General of India, announced his intention to scrap the Cabinet Mission Plan. This culminated in the Indian Independence Act of 1947 and the separate nations of India and Pakistan. So it has the prerequisites or it has something which caused the formation of two countries, India and Pakistan. So Constituent Assembly, what did it have? Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president. Jurist B.N. Rao was appointed constitutional advisor to the assembly. Rao prepared the original draft of the constitution and was later appointed a judge in the Permanent Court of International Justice in Hague. So Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president of this Constituent Assembly. Then B.N. Rao was the advisor. This assembly had 5 stages. Committees presented their reports on issues. They studied, they made research, they went and visited the places. They studied the constitutions of many other countries and then they presented their reports on issue. B.N. Rao prepared an initial draft based on the reports and his research into the constitutions of other nations. The drafting committee was chaired by Dr. Ambedkar. He presented a detailed draft constitution which was published for the public discussion. The draft constitution was discussed and amendments were proposed and enacted. The constitution was adopted with a committee of experts led by the Congress party, known as the Congress Assembly Party, played a pivotal role. So, Constituent Assembly debates. So, it started in the month of December 1946. To-do list was prepared by Jawaharlal Nehru and it, on the other hand, and these to-do lists became the part of preamble of Indian Constitution. So, this discussion is taking place on these resolutions. These ideas or a list of what to do is discussed in the Constituent Assembly. On 9th December 1946, formation of the Constitution Assembly demanding a separate state, the Muslim League boycotted the meeting. So, Muslim League did not join this meeting. They did not agree to join Indian Union. They wanted a separate nation. On 11th December 1946, President appointed Rajendra Prasad, Vice Chairman Harendra Kumar Mukherjee and Constitutional Legal Advisor B.N. Rao. Initially 389 members in total, which declined to 299 after partition. Out of 389, 292 were from government provinces, 4 from Chief Commissioners provinces and 93 from princely states. 13th December 1946, an objective resolution. This is what we are going to discuss. Objective resolution was presented by Jawaharlal Nehru, laying down the underlying principles of the Constitution, which later became the preamble of the Constitution. So, the resolution. What are these resolutions? This Constituent Assembly declares its firm and solemn resolve to proclaim India as an independent sovereign republic and to draw up for her future governance a constitution. We will have a constitution is the first resolution. For India's administration, we will have our own constitution is the first resolution. Second point, wherein the territories that now comprise British India, the territories that now form the Indian states and such other parts of India as are outside British India and the states as well as such other territories as are willing to be constituted in the independent sovereign India shall be a union of them all. So they demarcated the land boundary as well to frame a nation. Which all parts of India or which all parts would make a part of Indian Union. Moving to the third point, the said territories, whether with their present boundaries or with such other as may be determined by the Constituent Assembly and thereafter according to the law of the Constitution, shall possess and retain the status of autonomous units together with residuary powers and exercise all powers and functions of government and administration, save and except such powers and functions as are vested in or assigned to the Union or as are inherent or implied in the Union or resulting therefrom and. So this point says, today we have some provinces, so they will remain as it is or they may change, but we will come to know at the end when the Constituent Assembly decides the boundary of the Indian Union. All power and authority of the sovereign independent India is its constituent parts and organs of government are derived from the people. So when you study politics, you have 4 points: people, boundary, government. These powers, political powers, are derived from its people. So people are the one who are giving power to the government. The fifth resolution says, wherein shall be guaranteed and secured to all the people of India justice, social, economic and political, equality of status of opportunity and before the law, freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association and action, subject to law and public morality. So the next point is, so everybody is given opportunity in India. There is no upper group of people or lower group of people. All are equal in the eyes of the law. So they will be given equal opportunity. Law will treat everybody equal. That is what they brought in here. Adequate safeguards shall be provided for minorities, backwards and tribal areas and depressed and other backward classes as well. So these are the resolutions which became part of the preamble and they uphold the characteristics of Indian Constitution. How is it going to do and what is it going to do? And shall be maintained the integrity of the territory of the Republic and its sovereign rights on land, sea and air according to justice and the law of the civilized nations. This ancient land attains its rightful and honored place in the world and make its full and willing contributions to the promotion of the world peace and the welfare of mankind. So these are the primary resolutions of the Constituent Assembly of India where Jawaharlal Nehru put these for discussion in the Constituent Assembly. So all the members, most of the members got an opportunity to express their views on these points. Today we are going to discuss what was the view of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, whom we consider the father of Indian Constitution. He was the chairman of drafting committee. So what did he have to say on these points? Let us see. By this time, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was representing the Bengal constituency. So he starts his speech saying, Mr. Chairman, the resolution in the light of the discussion that has gone on since yesterday obviously divides itself into 2 parts. So those 8 parts, Ambedkar divides them into 2 parts. One part which is controversial and the other part which is non-controversial. So he categorizes 8 points into 2. One is controversial, which has many controversies and they have to be answered or they have to be discussed in the Constituent Assembly, and the other part which is non-controversial. He says non-controversial is the part which comprises paragraph 5 to 7, points 5 to 7 which we discussed. These paragraphs set out the objectives of the future constitution of this country. I must confess that, coming as the resolution does from Pandit Nehru, who is reputed to be a socialist, this resolution, although non-controversial, is to my mind very disappointing. Though he says 5 to 7 points are non-controversial, he says they are very disappointing. Let us know why he says so. The resolution suffers from certain other lacuna. I find that this part of the resolution, although it enunciates certain rights, does not speak of remedies. All of us are aware of the facts that rights are nothing unless remedies are provided, whereby people can seek to obtain redress when rights are invaded. I find a complete absence of remedies. This is the reason that he gives for this disappointment. He says the resolution have been promising the rights, but what if they are violated? How are people going to express their pain? How are people going to get their rights served properly? So that is what he says. It talks about rights, but there are no remedies. Unless the remedies are provided, it is useless. That is what Ambedkar says. That is his observation on non-controversial part of the resolution. Now I come to the first part of the resolution, which is controversial. First 4 paragraphs. As I said, from the debate that has gone on in the House, this has become a matter of controversy. The controversy seems to be centered on the use of the word republic. So, before we have established a nation, we have used this word republic. What is a republic? Republic is where people elect their own leader. It is not hereditary. A king will choose his own son as the next ruler of his land or territory. But in India, when we say republic, people will choose anybody that they want to be the president of a nation. It is centered on the sentence occurring in paragraph 4, the sovereignty is derived from the people. So he goes on explaining, thereby it arises from the point made by my friend Jaishankar yesterday, that in the absence of Muslim League, it would be not proper for this assembly to proceed to deal with this resolution. So the point raised by Ambedkar here is, Muslim League has gone out of Constituent Assembly. If we have to say that this constitution gives power to the government from its people, a part of its people has gone out, then how is this justifiable? I know today we are divided politically, socially and economically. So Ambedkar is reflecting the society of 1947 and it still remains here and there. He says we are divided politically, socially and economically. We are a group of warring camps. Ambedkar says, we are a group of warring camps. We are all here together, but we are fighting with each other. And I may go even to the extent of confessing that I am probably one of the leaders of such a camp. Ambedkar admits that yes, even I am part of one such group. But sir, with all this, I am quite convinced that given time and circumstances, nothing in the world will prevent this country from becoming one. So he is very positive on the unity of India. Today we might be fighting, but in future we will stand united. That is what Ambedkar is expressing here. With all our castes and creeds, I have not the slightest hesitation that we shall in some form be a united people. So he has this positive note. In the course of the debate that took place, there were 2 questions which were raised, which struck me so well that I took the trouble of taking them down on a piece of paper. So while discussing, there were 2 important questions and Ambedkar noted it down and he raises those 2 points to be discussed in the Constituent Assembly. The one question was, I think, by my friend Prime Minister of Bihar, who spoke yesterday in this assembly. He said, how can this resolution prevent the League from coming into the Constituent Assembly? So, how can these resolutions stop Muslim Leagues to join us? Today, my friend Shyam Prasad Mukherjee asked another question, is this resolution inconsistent with the cabinet mission's proposal? What is this cabinet mission? In 1946, it is a mission plan. It proposed a 3-tier administrative structure for British India with the federal union at the top tier, individual provinces at the bottom tier and groups of provinces as middle tier. So we have divided our nation into many groups and giving them priorities. So does this resolution, which is proposed now, those 8 points, are they consistent or inconsistent with this point? As I read this part of the resolution, I don't find any references to the idea of grouping. So when I read these resolutions, there is no mention of grouping the federal, the provinces and the union of provinces. 3-tier, 1, 2, 3. This is federal, provinces and group of provinces. So there is no mention of this in the resolution. That is what I find, says Ambedkar. So, an intermediate structure between the union and on the one hand and the provinces on the other. Reading this para in the light of the cabinet mission's statement, or reading it even in the light of the resolution passed by the Congress at its Warda session, I must confess that I am a great deal surprised at the absence of any reference to the idea of grouping of the provinces. So in this resolution, we find no mentioning of grouping of provinces. When we group the provinces, it gives more power to the group. That means more power to the people. But this is not mentioned in the resolution. That is what I found, says Ambedkar. I must confess that I am appalled at the idea that anybody in this country should think of solving the political problems of the country by the method of war. So that is one point where he raises the question of giving power to the people of India. The second thing is, he talks about the unity of Muslims and Hindus in India and many other political groups that kept on fighting with each other. So he says, I don't know how many people in this country support that idea of war. So we cannot solve the political problem with war. We have political ideologies, differences. We differ with our ideologies. But we cannot solve this problem by method of war. That is what he says. And he is telling, or his intention is to reach people on the issue of Hindu-Muslims fighting with each other. I do not know how many people in this country support the idea of war. A good many perhaps do. And the reason why I think they do is because most of them, at any rate, a great many of them believe that the war that they are thinking of would be a war on the British. So most of the people would think that when we start a war, it is against British. But what it is in reality, it is a war against British and Muslims. So this should not happen is the concern of Ambedkar. Well, sir, if the war that is contemplated, that is in the minds of people, can be localized, circumscribed so that it will not be more than a war on the British. So what war we are talking about, it can be manipulated, it can be changed. So when we understand its course, it won't be a war against only the British. It will be a war against Muslims as well, Muslims of India. I probably may not have much objection to the sort of strategy, but will it be a war on the British only? I have no hesitation, and I don't want to place before this house in the clearest terms possible that if a war comes in this country, and if that war has any real relation to the issue with which we are confronted today, it will not be a war on the British, it will be a war on the Muslims. So if we supported this idea of war, then it won't be a war against the British, but it would turn to be a war against Muslims. First, sir, permit me to observe that the use of force alone is but temporary. It may subdue for a moment, but it does not remove the necessity of subduing it again, and a nation is not governed which is perpetually to be conquered. So here he expresses in clear terms that if people of India kept on fighting with each other, then the government will be involved in putting down the revolt always. So once it puts down, there is a chance of revolt rising up again. So when it happens, that country will not be governed. It keeps on controlling those rebellions always, and there will be no place for governance. So he says, my next objection is its uncertainty. So if we control people with force, what happens? And this force cannot remain forever. And there is uncertainty. Terror is riot, always the effect of force, and an armament is not a victory. So terror is riot. If you threaten someone, they will rebel against you. And it is always the effect of force. So when you force somebody, you are terrorizing someone, and the result is they will revolt against it. An armament, if you have weapons, that is not the solution, or that is not the victory. If you do not succeed, you are without resources for reconciliation. Then, if conciliation fails, force remains. If you cannot convince the people of the other side, you have to keep on fighting with each other, and the force remains. Power and authority are sometimes bought by kindness, but they can never be begged as arms by an impoverished and defeated violence. So, power always comes from kindness. It is not arms. He says, further, the objection to force is that you impair the object by your very endeavors to preserve it. You are trying to preserve something, unity of India, with force. When you do it, in the end, what you get is not what you wished for. That is what is explained here. With united we stand, with divided we fall. This is the summary of Ambedkar's speech. He talks about the inconsistencies in the resolutions. Out of those 8 parts, he divides them into 2 groups. The first group is non-controversial, the second one is controversial. In non-controversial also, he had some disappointment. He says this non-controversial part did not promise the grouping of provinces in order to give more power to the people. In the controversial section, he said power is derived from people, but we are a group of people fighting with each other. The question will be a fight against the majority and the minorities of India, which he intended Muslim League as minorities. But if we kept on fighting each other, are we going to preserve the unity of India is the question. So many people were expressing their views to bring war in order to send out the British, and Ambedkar points out, if this happens, this war may be directed towards the minority as well. Therefore, war is not the solution. Then finally he says, we have to solve this, or we have to get the power of governance through constitution from the people. When this is to be achieved, we have to convince this in a very polite manner, and people should give the power to the government with their kindness. Therefore, united we stand and divided we fall. That is the message of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And he says it's the duty of the leaders of all parties to convince the other parties with difference to stay united and build a strong nation with a string. So, it's the duty of the leaders of all parties to convince the other parties with differences to stay united and build a strong nation with a strong foundation of unity. So this is the message. This is his observation. He gives this speech in order to retain the wonderful unity that we are expecting, not with war, but with compassion, understanding each other and giving each other all the prominence that they deserve. So with this, we understand Ambedkar had in his mind unity of India and strong structure to derive power from the people of India. And he also wanted to express or bring to the notice of the Constituent Assembly that when rights are violated, they should have some remedies. How, if somebody loses his right, can be helped? So with all these points, he finishes his speech, and this debate takes an important part in the Constituent Assembly debates that helped in the formation of Indian Constitution and was brought into force on 1950, January 26th. Thank you.